morning, everybody, and welcome to Shop Talk 27. I've got a bunch of people on here. Hang on a second. Let me just get back to me. I need to get all these people off the screen and just get to me. There we go. I'll pull them up here in just a minute. That's just a sneak preview of everybody's going to be participating in today's Shop Talk 27. This is a special Veterans Day Shop Talk live stream. And thank you to all you veterans out there that have given service. This Veterans Day in the United States. Obviously, we have people from all over the world, but thank you to all those who have served. Certainly appreciate that. And thank you to Jim Deeming for the wonderful intro music that we've got. This is also thank you to all of the sponsors. And let me just call attention to the Luther Academy website here real quick.
Luther thing. Okay.
I've got Dan talking there. Let's see if we can put him on mute. And put in the chat box where you're from, because I always enjoy the comments.
All right, I understand.
Dan, I don't know how to mute you, but somehow your mic is hot there. No, that's fine. That's fine. If you're joining us in the chat, go ahead and put in the chat box where you're from, because I always enjoy where the people are from, and I always read those afterwards too. So please go ahead and do that. Also, we're going to have a live stream drawing here in a minute. And I've got Cesar and Manuela all the way down there in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I'm going to pull them up here and put them on screen. There they are, Cesar and Manuela.
Hello.
Hello.
Now, Cesar and Manuela, they're down there. Oh, there's my cell phone. We don't need that on. They're all the way down there in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And they put up a green screen with my shop in the background, but they really are in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Believe me. Yeah. Cesar, how do you enter the drawing today?
Contact you. And at the middle of this live stream, we are going to give away one of Robert's repair and restoration courses. And maybe if we have time, we can even do one extra.
Perfect. All right. So there's the instructions on how to enter. Make sure that you check on the link or click on the link that Cesar has made there for us. Email address, name, and we'll have a drawing here in a few minutes. Cesar, we'll be back. Don't go away.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you for Cesar and Manuel all the way down there in Sao Paulo, Brazil. A couple of specials. I always like to announce some specials going on around at the Luthier Suppliers. LMI is having a 25% off special going on currently on Bubinga. Bubinga is a fantastic tone wood, so if you're into Bubinga, go ahead and check out LMI's website. Also, the best way to learn about the LMI specials is to go to their website, click on the link for their newsletter. If you get signed up for the newsletter, you'll be up to date on all the specials that they're having. Also, StuMac, always having specials on their tools and services. Go over to the chat box there. I think I put a link in there for the StuMac website. All right, well, let's see where everybody's from here. Well, there's somebody right here in my own state. There's Lewis from Colorado. Oh my God, without Dan's StuMac VHS video series back in the 90s, I would not be able to be where I'm at today. Yep, I know exactly what you're saying there, Lewis. And we'll bring Dan on here in a little bit and let him talk about those original VHS tapes. Michael, all the way in California, and up there in Ann Arbor. Thanks for tuning in. Oregon. We usually have a few people from Europe. Let's see if we got anybody from Europe on here. I'm sure we do. John, all the way down there in Florida. I'm always amazed at the reach that we have here with these with the technology we have today. Edmonton, Alberta. Edmonton is also always well represented here at the Luther Academy in the chats. All right, well, let's just go ahead and get started here. I think we might as well just bring some people on in no particular order. Let's start bringing some people on. Why don't we start with Doug Proper? Doug is in upstate New York. There he is, the guitar specialist, the man himself. All right, let's give him applause. Everybody give him an applause there. Oh, come on. Be a little bit better. There we go. How you doing this morning, Doug?
How are you, Robbie?
Can you give us a quick bio about how you got into lutherie and what you do?
Well, I don't know. I never had any real particular formal training. I kind of stumbled into it, just being a young guitar player and maintaining my own equipment. And I guess you could call it an informal monthly apprenticeship with a young fellow at the time by the name of Dan Erlewine, when I would eagerly await my copy of Guitar Player magazine to make sure I got his column so I could find out what to do next on any given repair in my shop. But I started in high school, and then when I got out of high school in the mid 80s, I put myself through college partially by doing repairs in my dorm room,
Oh, wow.
setups, fret work, and stuff like that while I was going to school for music. And so for me, repairing guitars was always, just an exercise in trying to avoid a day job. And I wound up doing it long enough that it ultimately turned into a career without me paying attention to it along the way.
Good for
So,
you.
I never really had any formal training. So I just kept doing it, and I did some building in the 90s and the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
and then, just continued to run my business.
Perfect. And your business is the Guitar Specialist, which I'm going to bring up here in just a second. Let's see if we can bring that up. He has a website, theguitarspecialist.com, and go check that out because there's plenty of information on there. How long have you been in your new shop there? That's for Doug.
Yep, that's the. I didn't hear what you.
I said, how long have you been in your new shop there? Because I know you started a new shop here recently.
Yeah. We moved into this shop about 4 years ago. It's probably the most luxurious shop we've ever had. But it seemed about every 10 years we were moving, and then about 4 years ago we were in a space that we didn't particularly want to be in long term, and we started looking around at the end of that lease, and we wound up with this one. And this is the first time we ever moved into a shop where instead of moving into the shop and then putting a cabinet here and sticking a bench here and then having to do work while you were doing it at the same time, this is the first time we had basically a 4,000 square foot empty box to move into.
Wow.
And we spent a good 6 or 8 months building this out before even moving into it. So it was a one probably once in a career luxury to be able to do. I can quickly just give you
Oh, wow. Look at that.
spin, of what the shop looks like, at least this room, of where.
Very impressive. I'm sure we could do a whole shop talk on just shop tours for everybody. That's fantastic.
Yeah, if you ever want to, I'd be happy to. But it's it's a pleasure to work here. It's probably the most luxurious shop we've ever had.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm going to take you off screen just for a minute here, Doug. I'm going to introduce somebody else. Let's see who we can introduce now. This is Mr. Dan Erlewine. I believe he is coming in. He says he's in the green room. There he is, Dan. Dan needs no introduction. Many of the people that are in the situations we're at today are probably due to Dan's influence, because he has influenced a lot of people, myself included. And thank you for doing that, Dan. Welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me today.
Now,
Good to see you all.
I just asked Doug real quickly how he got into this. Can you give me a quick background, of your history and how you got into it?
There's a lot of it's interrupting a lot here.
My question is, do you have a quick bio, how you got into lutherie?
I keep dropping out here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. You're coming through loud and clear.
I was raised by a family with a dad that did a lot of carpentry and made toys, and a mom that was an artist. So I started fixing guitars in about 1960 in high school, just for myself. And then I got a job in Ann Arbor at Herb David's Guitar Studio. And I've never done anything else since. Before that, I worked at McDonald's in high school.
Right.
Stuff like that in a grocery store.
Sure.
And I ran a business from 1969 until 1986, when I moved down to Stu Mac in November 1986, because I had gone to a trade show in 1984 with my videotapes and met Kick Stewart and Jay Hostetler, and they were just starting in. Banjos were down, and it was a new era, and they wanted to get into guitars, and Stuart offered me a job, and I thought about it and left a family of people in Big Rapids and headed south. So
Good for
can
you.
you hear me?
Yes, we can. You're coming in and out, but that's okay. Here's a
I
quick
spent
comment.
30.
Here's a quick comment from
I
Al.
spent
Thank you,
33
Dan,
years
for
working at
Here's a quick comment. Thank you, Dan, for all you have given us. You provide wisdom, knowledge, and experience to what was once considered black magic. You are the Da Vinci of guitar repair. Boy, that's quite the compliment.
well, we all know that's not true, but thanks. And I'm part of a big people that are from all ages. I'm proud that I helped a lot of people get into this trade,
Yes,
and I've had tons of apprentices over the years because I like being with people, and I like sharing ideas with people.
perfect.
When something really special happens in your shop, you just want to show somebody and tell them.
Absolutely.
So I'm still doing that, but I'm retired at StuMac, but they're just down the street. And I'm really enjoying Ian Davlin's Patreon, which came along when COVID came along, and a whole bunch of us have met here, and it's growing.
All right. Well, let's talk to Ian real quick. Dan, I'm going to take you off screen. I'm going to get back to Ian and bring him on screen here. And Dan just mentioned you, Ian. This is Ian Davlin up in New Jersey.
Hi, I'm Ian.
He runs a Patreon page. In fact, he was on the live stream, just 3 or 4 weeks ago or so?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
All right. Give us a quick background on what you do there, Ian.
Well, I'm in guitar repair, and mostly I'm doing Patreon now, where I'm teaching online just, some guitar repair techniques, mostly finish touch-up. It seems to be underrepresented in the world of guitar repair instruction, so it seems like a little bit of a niche. And but I repair out of my house. I've been at it since 1993, when I started an apprenticeship.
As my daughter says, that was like last century, right?
It seems like a last millennium, actually. But yeah. So and it started just basically by walking into a guy's shop, and he was working on a guitar, and I was like, "This is a thing." He said, "This is a thing," and I was like, "Will you show me the thing?" And he's like, "I'll show you the thing."
Very nice.
I kept it rolling for, I don't know, several decades now, I guess.
Wow. Good for you.
But yeah, when I started out, I just wanted, like working in the back of a music store seemed like a step up from working in the back of a restaurant. So that was my level of interest in it at that time. So
good for you. And if people want to find your Patreon page, is there an address for that?
It is Patreon /Ian Hates Guitars.
Okay.
So
good. And they can tune in and join that, and you'll learn a lot about repair and finish work.
Absolutely. And they can also interact with Doug and Dan on there too. So yeah. They're both frequent contributors / members and hanger-outers and all that kind of stuff. So
good. All right. Well, I'm going to try and get everybody on the screen here, if this is even possible, and we'll have a little group chat. I've got a list of questions for you. Let's start by bringing up, there's Doug again, and I think we've got Dan here somewhere, if we can find him. There's Dan down there. Look at that. We all fit on the screen together. Isn't that amazing? All right. I've got some questions. I'm going to introduce the question to each individual by name. If you have a comment that you would like to add to it, feel free to add to it. But let's start with the business of repair work. And I'm going to address this one to Doug, because recently I watched a video, I think it was Ian interviewing Doug, where you said something very interesting, Doug. You said you need to work on your business and not necessarily in your business. Can you elaborate on that, please, Doug?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is a snippet from a little workshop I did for Ian's Patreon on the business of repair. We did like a 2 or 3 hour just presentation of everything from running your business to being in your business to pricing and everything else. The notion of working on your business as well as in your business, or in addition to in your business, comes from the concept that, we as luthiers and repair people and techs and whether you're building or repairing, spend so much time at the bench worrying about what we got to get done on a customer's instrument that as you're racing to the end of every month, trying to make sure that the month doesn't outlast the money, you have to put aside time to work on the business, whether that's promotion, whether that's doing the books, whether that's financing, whether that's, sharpening your tools, and keeping up with all of the stuff you have to do in between each job. I can, knock out as many frets as I want, fret jobs as I want, but if I'm not printing invoices at the computer, it means I'm not getting paid.
Right.
So it's the kind of thing where there's this constant juggling act. Especially most of us are, are navigating this ship as a single occupant in the boat. So we don't have somebody running the engine room. We don't have somebody, at the helm. We don't have, people taking care of the ship
Right.
other than us. So that whole notion of making it a conscious effort to put time into your business to sort out those facts so the business can take care. The business isn't going to take care of itself if you don't set up the wherewithal for doing it. So I've always approached this career, even though I joked earlier about it being a way to avoid a day job. I was always conscious of the fact that it was a business, and if I wanted to do something I love to do and starve at it, I could just play guitar in jazz clubs all night. But if I was going to run a business, that the business had to sustain itself and grow, whether it was through people or revenue or that kind of thing. I run the business with my wife Sharon. We're both luthiers, and we're the only two here now. At one point in the past, we had a total of 7 people in the shop, and we had grown in terms of size of people. And then about 2010, we reversed course and shrunk it again in terms of the number of people to be just ourselves again through attrition.
Right.
But that whole notion of running your business is different from doing the work. And that's why I bring that up. But there's a whole presentation that's a couple of 3 hours long that I did for Ian that's in the history of his Patreon that's there for people to see. And if you'll allow just one quick comment regarding Ian's Patreon,
Sure.
I think it's probably the greatest invention since sliced bread as it relates to
Nice.
Lutheran. I think as far as a tool to grow your skills and to grow your the community that you're in as a Luth, I think it's probably the best thing that I've come across since Dan Erlewine invented the Joas fret press.
Nice.
So I couldn't speak more highly of it because I really believe in the concept of what he's doing.
Yeah. Thank you very much for those thoughts, Doug. Just to add to those, I had a surgeon one time come and study with me. And he said, Rob, he says, you're like a surgeon. A surgeon makes money in the operating room. The surgeon doesn't make money doing the administrative work and all that other stuff that comes behind it, the production behind it. He says, you only get paid doing surgery. So luthiers are kind of the same thing. We don't get paid checking our social media. We don't get paid, cleaning our shops. We get paid doing a job and billing for that.
I agree with you to an extent, but I will push back on you a little bit about that.
Okay.
Because a surgeon has an entire team behind them, allowing them to do nothing but step out of their Lamborghini,
Yep.
walk into the operating room, and cut somebody open.
Yep.
We, as people who are running a business, if I don't pay the light bill, eventually the lights will go out. And I don't care how good I am. If I'm swinging at a hammer swinging a fret hammer at a guitar in the dark, I'm going to miss. So in that sense, there's a juggling act. I agree with you that we only get paid when we're at the bench, and maybe we can talk about it a little bit later when it comes to pricing.
Mm-hmm.
That's where what I'm talking about, and I talk about that in the lecture I did for Ian, was that when I'm at the bench earning revenue, it has to pay for all of those hours that I'm working in the shop that I'm not working on guitars.
Right.
And I've said it before that there are two places that I earn money. When I'm standing at the front counter with a customer assessing an instrument, that's where I make my money. When I'm at the bench performing the work is where I earn it.
Ah,
Two aspects to that, and there's a whole set of mechanics between that front counter and the bench that have to take place if a business is going to stay open for a long period. I mean, I know lots of lutes who have crossed paths with me during the years that, sooner or later at some point wind up wearing an orange apron at Home Depot.
right.
Not that there's anything wrong with that if that's what you want to do. But if you want to run a shop, you have to keep the lights on and you have to stay ahead of all of that other stuff in order to be able to perform at the bench. So in a pricing sense, you have to know where your break point is, and that when you're at the bench, what you're earning at the bench pays for all of those hours that you're not generating revenue.
Right.
So we can talk about that a little bit more later.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. Thanks for that insight. I'm going to bring on Dan. Let's see if we can get him in. Dan, you've muted yourself. So you want to take yourself off mute. I'll bring you up here. And I want to ask Dan about pricing. Can you give us a little insight of how you price or how someone should price their work?
That's pretty simple, really. And I talked with Frank Ford about this a long time ago when I met him. You have to figure out how many hours you have in a year to work and figure out how much you'd have to charge by the hour or by the job to make that much money. And if it doesn't equate, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Or you should be doing the other part of the work that Doug's talking about, which is improving your shop and the efficiency of it. And a lot of people say, I charge $90 an hour. Frankly, I don't really believe it's very easy to make $90 an hour for most guitar shops in a steady flow.
Right.
Because you have to stop and vacuum, clean, build shelves, do all that other work.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very important how much time you spend with a customer taking a job in. That's money you have to get paid for. It's really simple. How many hours do you have to work and how many hours do you want to work without burning out? And I suffered with that for a long time, 16, 17 years of actually opening a business way after high school. And at that point, living in a small community up in Michigan, it was pretty hard to make a good living without driving around a tri-county area of Michigan picking up guitars at stores, which I did.
Right.
So when Stu Mack came along, all of a sudden it was a whole different thing because I had a salary, but I wasn't free anymore to do the work that I loved. I did it at home at night and on weekends, of course. But I don't know where I'm going with that. It doesn't matter.
Dan, are there any types of jobs or any work that you would turn down if you have that luxury? A lot of luthiers don't have that luxury to turn down work. Is there something that you would just say no to?
I would say no to guitars worth $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $20,000 because I get enough work that I don't need those. And the older I get and the less work I want to take on, I'm being pretty picky. And my goal is I have two apprentices right now.
Mm-hmm.
One girl, one guy, and they've been with me 4 years on and off.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to take in enough money for me to pay them, but I'm trying to get out of the business slowly and just play with my tools. It hasn't happened yet.
Right.
And I've also, as far as business goes, I've been married to my wife, Joan, since 1969, and she has run the total end of the business, all money, all figuring that kind of stuff out. she's the one that's bought computers, figured out how to use them, and followed the flow of all that sort of stuff. And that makes it really easy if you have a partner that can do a lot of the work.
Right.
So that's the kind of work that allows me to be at the bench more, just like Doug's talking.
Right.
Because my partner's doing the other part, and there's a lot to it, as you know.
Right. All right. Well, thank you very much for that insight, Dan. I'm going to take you off screen. I'm going to bring up Ian. I'm going to continue the conversation. Let me bring up Ian here. Let's see. There goes Dan, and here comes Ian. There he is.
What are we talking about? Pricing?
Well, we were talking about pricing, but I want to change the subject just a little bit. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. You don't know this question's coming.
I just prepared some pricing answers too.
Oh, did you? Well, go ahead. Continue that, and then I'll throw the.
That's okay. No, hit me with the curveball.
All right, here we go. Evan Gluck. Everybody recognizes the name Evan Gluck. He's a very famous luthier there in New York. Does a lot of repair work. I was talking to him one time at a convention or a guitar show or something, and he said, "Robbie, I doubled my income when I stopped doing finish work." And I said, "Well, how is that?" He says, "Well, you can't make any money in it. It's always tedious. It's hard to do, blah, blah, blah." He says, "So I just started farming it out. That left me time for the bread and butter stuff, the fret jobs, the setups, whatever." And he said, that allowed me to make more money. I would like to get your perspective on that, Ian, because you're doing the Patreon page. You're talking about finish work. So what do you think?
Yeah, I am. And, like a lot of the angles that I take for the finish work is more like you're going to have a hard time in this job if you don't know how to cover your tracks. So a lot of the finish work we encounter in repair work is self-inflicted. And it's very hard. Now, Evan's got a lot of experience, and he probably doesn't ding guitars very often, but he did, a couple of years ago, and he came over and he said, asked me if I could help him, and I did. So for a lot of people, having somebody like me, across the GW bridge from you is not an option, and you're left to your own devices. So that's where a lot of the finish work comes from. I've made some money on finish work. I have, however, the experience of working in a finish department in a major manufacturer or minor manufacturer, but but I've been doing it for a long time. So, I've seen a lot of the variables come up and, bite me, and learned how to deal with them. But as a general rule, if a young guy was like, I want to get into touch up to make some money, I'd be like, no, you don't. You'd be better off putting on that orange apron Doug was talking about.
Right.
So.
Right. Did you want to add anything about the pricing conversation we were having with Dan? How do you price your work?
Well, I think the luxury to turn down items unless you're starting out and you want learning projects, if you look at something and there's no way to make money on it, I mean, it's not a matter of luxury to turn it down. It's a matter of survival. So we've all stepped in, dog poop on repair projects, taking in stuff that we underbid, or we were optimistic, or it interested us, or looked like a project that would develop our skill set a little bit. And for that, I'm telling young people now, if you want a whodunit of a project, take one of those in at a time. Be very honest with the customer, say, this is a learning project for me. But by and large, if you're not keeping the lights on, as Doug was saying, then you're not going to do it by taking in projects that are losers. So you'd be better off just, and it's hard when you're starting out. That's one of the things that we do on the Patreon is, these guys are asking those questions in our forum, in our Luth-along and stuff. They're saying, they're showing us projects, and they're saying, is this a winner? Is this a loser? How would you handle it? And, the older guys are going, no. We just had somebody on the forum ask, this shop's wondering if they gave us work, and would we cut them a deal on it? I just tell them, no, guitar repair is too stupid to have 3 people in the transaction.
Right.
you just got to make all the money, like, so don't do that. So those questions come up, like these, how to price, how to stuff, get these, get the money in the door. So
A couple of years ago, over the course of about 3 to 5 years, I documented every repair that came across my bench in the form of a video. And then I put together what I call a repair and restoration series. It's available on the Luthier Academy website. In fact, we're going to be giving one away recently. One of the lessons in there is titled, Just Say No.
Yeah.
Is there any work that you would just say no to?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, there is. It's a little bit different now because most of the repair work I'm taking is in service of the Patreon thing. Like, I take the stuff in this, I think I can demo, and maybe I underbid it just a little bit, so I've got the project and it lines up. Right. But yeah, there's a lot of them. What Dan said about the value of the instruments too, like you think that you go and you spend a lot of time luthing and you're going to get these good touches on valuable instruments, but they are, in my experience, like, they come with a price, like they come with the price of like adding a rider to your insurance policy. Right. If you're, insured, they come with the price of like, being discussed on internet forums, like after you're done, if it's an important enough project to me. And they don't seem to come with the pay increase that you would think for dealing with this stuff. Right. And so for me, like what Dan was saying, like I got about a $20,000 limit, I think, depending on what needs to be done. Now I'll do, like, if somebody's done bad touch-up work on a guitar and I have to come in and do, my touch-up and keep it tight and keep it small and just improve something, like I'll work on whatever. But when it comes to like, like doing major stuff, like on old guitars where you're like taking bridge plates out and rolling the dice on, guitars that are spontaneously combusting before your very eyes, like that doesn't interest me on really valuable instruments anymore, because the liability is just too much for the pay that's involved.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, thanks for your insight.
I've become a coward, Robbie. That's what it comes down to.
I know the feeling. I find myself saying no more and more often the older I get, and it's just like, it's not worth it. It's not.
You said yes to that guitar from Hawaii though, and that's when I did one here recently, and I shipped it off to Hawaii, and I was like, and then it's going to go live in the land of 90% humidity year round. I wonder how that's going to work out.
Yeah, well, I definitely bumped up the humidity in my shop while it's here, and I've got it in that room behind me, which is about 55% right now. It's really a little low for where the guitar came from, but I'm so worried that thing's going to shrink and crack on me while it's here. I need to get it done, get it back out the door.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your insight there, Ian. I'll tell you what, why don't we've got 82 people here tuning in currently, and we've got a bunch of questions in the chat box. So I'm going to pop down to Brazil real quick. I'm going to let Cesar and Manuel do a quick little giveaway, a little drawing there. And then we'll come back, and I want to ask Dan and Doug and Ian a few more questions. So let's pop down to Brazil. And there is Cesar and Manuela. Yay!
Hello.
All right. What are we giving away, Cesar? Can you hear me, Cesar? Come in, Cesar.
We are getting. Oh, now we are hearing. Sorry, there's some connection issues going on today.
Yes, the internet. Welcome to the internet, right?
Yes.
So, what are we giving away today?
We have 54 participants for this round.
Okay.
And we are giving one of your courses, the repair and restoration course that was mentioned just a moment ago.
Okay, so Manuela has the random number generator there. Go ahead.
Yeah. Number 10. And so let me switch to the spreadsheet. And let's see who number 10 is. Number 10 is Roger Mills.
Roger Mills, congratulations. You have won my repair and restoration online course. Cesar will be in touch. Thank you, Manuela. Thank you, Cesar. And congratulations to Roger. We'll be back at the end of the stream. If we get a chance, perhaps we'll do another drawing. Thank you very much, Cesar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, back here we are in the U.S., and I'm going to try and bring on all four of our guests here all at one time. Let's see how this is going to work. Here comes Dan, here comes Doug, and here comes Ian. I want to put them on the spot again here. I love putting people on the spot. But here comes a question. We've talked about saying no. All of us have probably had a horror story or something that went south. I know I have, and I have got, I need to confess my sins because I've got a lot of things that I probably should never have taken on, things that have dropped off the bench during the repair. I just want to get some of your stories here if we can. Let's start with Dan. Dan, you got any horror stories or things that went south on you that you care to admit to? Dan is muted. Unmute yourself, Dan. Still muted. Oh, says I'm
there.
Hang on. There we go. How about
I can go.
There we go. All right.
For example, like we talked about, don't take on jobs just to find out how to do it if it's over your head. And one example for me was the second guitar neck I ever made was on a Martin 0028 classical guitar.
Right.
That a lady I knew in Ann Arbor wished she had a steel string, and I said, "Oh, I'll convert that for you." And of course, I took off the top and X-braced it, put it back on, and I made a neck which took me a long time. Maybe it was my first neck. I just know it took me forever to make it. And when I finally was fitting it to the body, I thought, that's weird. The bridge isn't in the right place. Because I'm thinking steel string, knowing nothing, and I had made a 14-fret neck for it. And I swear I sat down and cried. I just sat down. And I had months into that neck to get it on.
No.
And I had to start all over. Another one was working on a Epiphone Sheraton. And I was trying to drill a ground wire from, I forget what it was, but it was probably from a tailpiece stud going back to the cavity. I'm not sure, but all I know is that I had a really long drill bit and it just kept going. I'm thinking, it's not there yet. And I turned the guitar over and it had come out the back.
Oh, no.
And that's where I got a good lesson on grain and that things follow the course of least resistance.
Right.
And I did a passable job of touch-up. Nothing like what we might do today or Ian could do. Yeah. And there's more, but those two come right to mind.
Okay. Let's go to Ian. Ian, have you got any little stories you could tell us?
Well, I mean, people are always like, "Hey, you're good at touch-up." And I was like, I know, it's because I'm terrible at everything else. Like but that's in a nutshell. I mean, I could tell you about the time I accidentally hosed down a 1960 Les Paul at Gruen's with acetone. Thought I reached for some naphtha and hosed it down with acetone instead.
Oh no!
But I got like the secret to that. If you do that, like, by the way, your first instinct is to grab a paper towel and do some wiping, which would be a horrible mistake. But I just like picked the guitar up, dumped it upside down, and let all the acetone fall off. But it was not exactly a like 100% great afterwards. But
oh no!
And
what about the client?
Yeah. I'm not even sure. You know, we were so far removed from clients that, you know, like it was in there for trying to make Bigsby holes go away, which was fashionable a while ago. And it was actually had come to me after somebody else had tried to make Bigsby holes go away. So I was actually kind of like in the position of kind of trying to reverse something that had already kind of gone sideways. So, so my reputation wasn't completely besmirched. It's a whole rigmarole. It actually take probably about 45 minutes and 7 beers to tell the story properly. But but suffice it to say, I've had some, I've had some stuff. Yeah, I found out that, most peghead designs are double-sided and have drilled through pegheads installing tuners before. So that's
Yep.
always fun.
Yep.
And, like all that kind of good stuff. I had a client when I was working at Lark Street so upset with the decision that I made that he decided to sit cross-legged on the floor and in the basement with tears streaming down his face, threatening to sue my employer. So that was pleasant.
Oh no.
But yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I've made the back of my pants pretty warm over the course of this career.
I swear that someday we should all get together and just put all of these down on paper and write a book about things that have, gone south.
Yeah.
And thank you to Drew.
I-
Drew, excuse me, just a minute. Even thank you to Drew Boyd. He put $20 in the super chat. My God,
That's
thank you
good.
so much for doing that.
We'll figure out what my cut is afterwards.
I think we could all perhaps get half a cup of coffee when this is over with. But thank you so much for Drew for doing that. Let's go over to Doug.
I wasn't done with,
oh, you weren't done. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I did snap the headstock off of Steve Martin's guitar too, so that was nice. Like snapped it clean off.
That's a great story, actually.
Yeah, like doing something routine, like flexing the neck after fretting it to see what was going on, and the peg head just exploded off of it. Like it was fun.
Gee, well, let's go over.
Immediately called my wife and told her I quit. I'm done luthing.
But you kept it. You kept with it. Thank God.
What else am I going to do?
Let's go over to get Doug's opinion. I'm sure Doug's got a couple stories, and just so you guys don't feel bad, I'll throw maybe one or two of my stories in there too. Go ahead, Doug. Did we lose Doug? Earth to Doug. Come in, Doug.
You had breaking up, and I wouldn't hear it. I didn't hear a word you were saying there.
Oh, I said you probably got a story or two as well. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think any of us who have been in this business for as long as the group we have here today are will be able to admit that, at least I do, and I think I've said this to Ian before, that I've probably learned my best touch-up techniques covering my own mistakes, and that's just that's a function of a phrase I like to use often, of spending an entire life hovering over other people's property with sharp objects in your hands. So the whole notion that you're, going to get good at touch-up eventually, because you have to learn how to cover your mistakes. A couple of experiences I had early on that kind of informed my entire career are, I'll quickly just relate those. When I was very young in the business, I was sharing shop space with another individual, and I had a Martin guitar. I don't remember how old it was or much about it, but I had a Martin guitar in that I had just finished doing all sorts of work on, and very proud of what I had done to it. And I was holding it while, showing the guy I was sharing a shop with what was going on and what he had done and what do you think of this and how that. And I'm holding it by its neck, and I'm standing in front of a doorway. And the third person we were sharing the shop with came barreling through the door, pushing the door open, and the doorknob went right through the back of the guitar. And of course, after about 4 hours of tears, cursing, and deciding that life as I knew it was over, a conversation with the customer on the phone, I had to admit to the customer that repairing this is well beyond my capabilities at the time, and the only thing I could do was offer to have it repaired in someone else's shop, and that went up into Connecticut to another luthier shop who, I got the bill, so I know it was completed at some point. And that experience, first of all, every shop I ever had from then on in, the first thing that ever happened was all the doors came off of the hinges and got just stored out back. I don't have any doors in any shop that I'm in, and maybe that's just a little bit of post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
But that happening so early to my career made me very keen on the idea that I've got other people's property in my shop. So almost everything I've done over the last nearly 40 years has been in service of making sure that a customer's instrument doesn't get damaged in my care or because of circumstances.
Right.
Partially just because you know, I didn't want to ever have to suffer that again. And the other part of it was they made me keenly aware of what my limitations were at the time and what I needed to develop as a repair guy. And I started down the path of trying to teach myself all of those techniques. And as somebody who is self-taught, I've spent most of my career very conscious or self-conscious of the fact that I didn't have any formal training. I didn't have a real, you know, apprenticeship or tutorship with somebody. At the time, there weren't, you know, the Gallups, the Roberto Vans, and all those other schools
Right.
that, you know, are out there in such prominence as they are today. And so I, you know, made sure that I spent time practicing everything. And another story to relate to that, I was in college, and that was during the same period of time, and doing most of the repairs in my dorm room and the bigger repairs in this shop space that I shared with a friend at his shop. And at that time I was doing, you know, a little bit of fret work, mostly setups, you know, electronics, hot rodding, pickups, yada, yada, yada. And I had a customer come to me towards the end of the semester, picking up a guitar that I just worked on for him. And he said, "Hey," he says, I got a Les Paul. I should have brought it with me today that I want to bring you." He says, "It's in desperate need of a refret. Can I bring that next time I come up?" And at the time, I hadn't refretted a guitar. I was doing a little bit of fret work, leveling crowns, replacing nuts, saddles, setups, you know, the occasional, you know, structural repair or brace reglue that I could kind of muddle my way through. And this panic set over me that, you know, I was going to have to tell a customer that I don't know how to do that, which is an affliction most of us, I think, have. And most of us get into our worst trouble when we're dealing with a customer. We're accepting work that we're not being honest with ourselves is beyond our capability. So I quickly demurred and said, "Well, look, you know, we're at the end of the semester. I got finals next week, and then I got to go away for the summer because I got to earn money to come back next semester. So I got like 3 jobs lined up for the summer. So I really couldn't take it in right now anyway. I said, why don't you, you know, hit me up with that question again next September when I'm back at school?" And he says, "Fine, fine, fine." He says, I'll you know, we'll take care of that." He says, "It can wait until then." You know, and I said, "Well, if you really need it done quicker, you probably want to have it done by somebody else." And, you know, I figured I'd get myself off the hook. And he said, "No, no, no. I love the work you do. Why don't we wait till then?" And so, okay, I dodged a bullet for the moment, but I went away for the summer realizing that I was now on this time clock for having to accept this repair or tell him that I couldn't do it. So I decided at that moment that the first thing I did when I got home is I bought about 6 or 7 guitars, different guitars, classical, electric, acoustic, you name it. And I spent my entire summer refretting all of them no less than 10 times a piece.
Wow.
And by the time I got to September, I had 60 refrets under my belt. Nights, weekends, I would get frets in the guitar, and as soon as I would get done with it, if I was smart at the time, I would have practiced leveling and crowning them a number of times before I ripped the frets back out. But I'd put frets in, I'd get to the next guitar, rip those frets out, and I just went round robin on all of those guitars until I got to the end of the year. And then I realized he showed up and he says, "How about that Les Paul? I want to bring up a Les Paul and a setup for you to do. But can you do the refret on the Les Paul? Can we talk about that?" So bring it on. I'm ready. And that informed me for the rest of my career that if I was going to accept a job, and I see, unfortunately, too much with younger lutes where they're excited to learn a new technique or a new type of repair on a customer's instrument. And I have when I hear that, I cringe a little bit because that's great if you want to learn how to do that on a customer's instrument. But if you're excited to do your first neck reset on a customer's guitar, I feel sorry for your customer and you at the end of that job, possibly.
Right.
So, if you want to learn something new, practice it a lot. And that's something else that informed me, personally throughout my career, that I won't do a repair on a customer's guitar unless I get a chance to practice it. And there are times where customers come in and say, "Can you do this?" And I say, "Yeah, I'll do it. But if you're patient enough to wait for me to try it on a crash dummy first, half a dozen times while I'm, developing my confidence to be able to complete the repair."
Right.
And sometimes customers don't want to wait, and that's fine.
That's great advice. Great advice. I'll add just a couple of quick stories, and we need to move on to the next subject here. About 10 years ago, I had a Russian immigrant here in Colorado brought me an old Gibson, old acoustic Gibson. And it wasn't a high dollar guitar, but to him, it was everything. Because living in Russia, he thought America was Gibson. And so the very first thing he did when he got to the States, when he could afford it, was he purchased an old Gibson guitar at a yard sale. And somewhere along the way, it had got busted up and broken and stuff. And he wanted me to take the neck off of that thing. And he brought it to me, and it's just all cracked. Back is cracked, top is cracked, sides are cracked. I thought, okay, you want me to fix it? No, just take the neck off. Okay. So long story short, I gave that guitar back to him in pieces. That neck would not come off. And I did more damage than good to that instrument. And I just felt terrible. When he came back to pick it up, I said, "Look, I'm so sorry, sir, but this thing just disintegrated in my hands as I was trying to take that neck off." And he said, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to take this thing back to Russia for $20 and a bottle of vodka. They'll make it brand new." I said, "Okay." Dan's got a statement. Go ahead, Dan.
One thing I remembered in 1971 when Joan and I had our now oldest daughter Meredith, she was just a baby. We went from Ann Arbor up to Big Rapids where my parents lived, and she left a whole load of diapers in the bucket in the laundry room, which was over the basement, and the bucket had a leak in it.
Oh no!
And all the urine and water from these dirty diapers went through the floor and completely dripped totally onto a Starfire bass that was in its case.
Oh no!
And we got back after about 4 days, and the Starfire bass the case had turned white and was all loose and soggy. And I opened it up, and the bass was white too. And I had to buy one. I had to go out and buy a new Starfire bass.
Wow!
And that hurt. That hurt.
I bet. One other quick story. Actually, one is an example of what not to do in your shop. I used to have a set of cabinets that are across the room over there now. I used to have them over my bench. I learned real quick not to put cabinets over your bench because anytime you'd open it up, something would fall out. And I had a bad experience with that one time. So when you're doing your shop layout, guys, don't put cabinets over your bench. Put the cabinets or the drawers under the bench. Here's another quick story. This actually happened just a couple of years ago. I had a guy in Colorado brought me a pretty high-end classical guitar. It wasn't super high-end, but it was a nice guitar. Asked me if I could do a refret. Sure, I can do a refret. That was one of the quickest refrets I think I've ever done. I'm thinking, man, this is great. I'm almost scared to say anything because it went so smoothly, except for one fret up about number 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there, that the end would not stay down. I'm almost done with the job. I said, "Oh, okay, no problem. I'll just run a little super glue in there. I'll glue the fret end down. We'll get this off the bench." I hit it with a little bit of accelerator because it was right before lunch. I'm anxious to get to lunch. Hit it with some accelerator. Life's good. Leveled, recrowned. I went to remove the protectors from the soundboard. Apparently, I got a little happy with the accelerant, and it had run under my protectors and just ate a hole about that size into the finish. Now I'm freaking out because I want to get to lunch. I've completely destroyed this guy's guitar. I thought, well, I can fix it. So finish repair sometimes goes from bad to worse, as Ian, I'm sure you've found that out. And it's just going from bad to worse. Finally, I pick up the phone. I call the client. I said, "You're not going to believe this. You just got yourself a free fret job. I have completely destroyed the finish on your guitar up there by the fretboard extension. I sent him some pictures. He called me back, says, yep, you ruined my guitar. He says, here's what we're going to do. He says, I'm not going to, you're not going to do it for free. I'm going to pay you what you asked me. I said, well, how's that even possible? I mean, I've destroyed your instrument. He said, no, I'm going to pay you 100%. And here's the reason why. He says, I work in IT, and I have gone into people's systems and destroyed more systems than I care to admit to, and they always paid me. So I'm going to pay you 100% for that fret job. So anyway, we could go on and on and on about stories. We're getting close to the end of our time here together because these gentlemen have taken times out of their busy schedules, and I just want to ask them some quick advice about anybody wanting to get into this line of work. What would you ask, or what would you what advice would you give to them? Let's start with Dan. What advice would you give to somebody wanting to get into lutherie?
Do what Doug did. Buy cheap guitars online in junk shops and practice. Take on jobs that would scare the heck out of you, but go ahead and do them, which will immediately make you find out that you don't have the tools to do it. And that's how you'll learn what tools you need,
right,
and grow from there. Of course, I've seen an awful lot of successful people go to schools that are available today, and it launches them on a great career. Those weren't available back when we were kids.
That's right.
I would have been at one, and I would have dropped out of high school to do that if my parents would have let me.
Right.
But if in my town, I have had at least 6 apprentices in this shop, maybe more, in the years I've been here, because they knock on the door and come in and introduce themselves, and if they touch you in the right way, I take them on because I love having people to teach, and I like having help. One reason it's important for me to have young person. It doesn't have to be young, but that's the only ones that would be able to do it. That'll work really cheap or for nothing to be in the shop because they have years to do it. I think it's important to get help in your shop. It frees you up to do so many things.
Right.
And I still do that today.
Great advice. Ian, any advice for somebody wanting to get into the profession here?
Yeah, there are a lot of school options that weren't available when I was young, or maybe I didn't know about because the internet wasn't available. But yeah, Red Wing and Gallup. There are apprenticeships out there. I did one. I would say if you're going to do an apprenticeship, do your due diligence. Find out from other people what these people are up to. I mean, there are charlatans out there and people that will just kind of abuse you in that role. So really find out have they successfully apprenticed somebody, and is that person in the business, working? Like, find that kind of stuff out, almost like you would ask a school, because you don't want to my apprenticeship was 2 years unpaid, and you don't want to get through something like that and then find out that you're you don't have anything for your time. So. Right. But the Red Wing program is, attached to a, bona fide, state school. So when you come out, you've got credentials. If you do Red Wing, you could go in there, and while you're doing guitars, you could do their violin program and see if, rehair and bows suits you. Rehair and bows, you'll never not have enough money for beer again if you know how to rehair a bow. So, that's important to young people, have enough beer. So
sure.
Yeah, I would say look there.
Oh, we lost him.
People that are looking for apprentices too. So,
all right, we lost you just for a second there, Ian, but I think you concluded your thought. Let's pop over to Doug. Uh-oh. Doug, have you got any quick advice for anyone wanting to get into the profession?
I think it would probably echo what you just heard from Ian and Dan. I think I'm a huge believer in working on crash dummy guitars whenever I've got to practice something I haven't done before. I would be remiss if I didn't. The schools are a great thing. If I were young today, I'd probably be going to Red Wing or Gallup or Roberto Venn. Is ASL still around? Are they functioning?
I don't know. I don't know.
American School of Lutherie. I remember that name, but I think but I would remiss if I didn't mention if I were a young Luth trying to get into it. The first thing I would do is sign up for Ian's Patreon, because there's no better resource for being part of a community.
Don't
Just to
forget
be able to.
Robbie's videos. There's a lot of good stuff on Robbie's videos too. Like
Oh, I've seen Robbie's website too. Yeah. But I was talking more about the community of just being able
Yeah.
to pop up Booth along on any given day and just be able
Sure.
to ask, seasoned, graybeards a question,
Yeah.
But other than that, I pretty much mirror what they had to say.
Great. I want to talk real quickly to each of you about future projects and things you have going on. I know, Dan, you have some new model guitars you're working on. Can you elaborate on that?
The only guitars that I have in any sort of production are being made by Brian Gallup now. We went into a partnership. It's simply it's a replica of the Albert King guitar that I made for Albert and one for Jerry Garcia. And I make some one-off guitars in my shop.
Mhm.
Projects going on. One project I have, if anyone's interested, is if anyone out there has ever seen or used the old Stumac Ultimate Repair Vise that went out of it, that was sold 25 years ago and is no longer around. Blake Burkholder, my apprentice, and I have found an Amish shop down there where Blake lives that is going to take on to make those.
Oh, nice.
And I've already got 4 or 5 people that want them. To make one, it would be $2,000. To make 10, it would be more like $600 or $500. And these vices are very much worth $500. And I do love the total vices very, very much. I maybe got into it half a year after Doug, when I didn't know Doug, and Blake found it online, and I called Jeff Howard, and I went through a lot of models with him, just like Doug did, to say, no, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. And my God, everybody's going to love the newest one coming out. I've already put an order in for it. So that's a sales speech. And as far as teaching or learning the trade, before COVID came, I was taking on students, and they would live in my basement apartment of the shop. Then they'd come for a week or 2 weeks, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's an awful lot of Luths out in this country that are really good that would do the same thing if you approached them. It's for me, it was a way to make money and not having to work for a customer, but just do whatever I wanted to show somebody, and that's like not working as hard. Don't be afraid to go out there and meet somebody and see if they would take you on.
Speaking of not working as hard, do you ever plan on slowing down, Dan?
I am slowing down right now. I'm trying to slowly get out of the business. I'm game to teach, and I want to just play with my tools. I want to work on one guitar at a time, not have 10 in the shop at one time, and not be driven crazy by stress from the customers.
Right.
And I'm 78 years old and ready to I'll be hanging up my hat, not taking on work, but sending work to good people that I know.
Great. Okay.
And
Ian, you've got, we've mentioned your Patreon page here a bunch of times, but go ahead and talk about some of the projects you're doing and the Patreon page and all that kind of stuff.
Well, we've got a couple things coming up. One, if you liked listening to Doug and Dan talk, we've got a new show coming up called D&D, or Doug and Dan, or Dan and Doug. We haven't decided exactly yet, but they're going to do a combined show on the Patreon. This next one is going to be, working title is Fretorama. We're going to see how many different ways that there are to put a fret in a fret slot. Dan, I don't know if you know about this, but Dan invented the original Jaws. There's Jaws 2, there's Jaws 3, there's hammers, there's presses, there's lasers, I'm told. But we're going to see how many different ways that we can put frets in a fret slot, and then they're going to talk about it and come up with pros and cons and stuff like that. I'm excited to see it, and excited to not be doing all the talking for one of the AMAs.
When is that coming up? When's the date?
This is going to be the 17th of November at 1 p.m. It's going to be the inaugural Dan and Doug D&D, Advanced D&D.
Go ahead, Dan. You had something to add to that.
I just wanted to add that I can't speak enough about Ian's Patreon. That was the lifesaver for a whole bunch of it. We had workshops here. Ian taught at 2 of them, touch-up workshops, and we had Tim Frick on sharpening and planes and link Van Cleave, and then COVID. It was really going someplace. At our last one, we must have had about 21 people in my shop that flew in for these 2-day workshops, and all the people that came to those sort of gravitated over to Ian when he opened a Patreon, and we now have this tremendous friendship, and I've never learned more than I've learned on the Patreon in the last 2 years.
Ian, if people
are showing up,
if people want to join your Patreon, how do they do it?
Go to Patreon /www. I'm assuming Patreon /Ian Hates Guitars.
Okay.
And there's tiers. Like I've got tiers for people that are in the schools. So there's a Gallup tier, there's a Red Wing tier, and then there's 2 other tiers. One is the basic one that will get you the Dan and Doug stuff, and then there's the Ding Kings, which is primarily reserved for more of the in-depth, like finished touch-up stuff, and that one's a little bit pricier, but I'm told well worth it. With all that, you get access to what I think Dan and Doug both really like, which is our Luth-along, which is a live Zoom feed that's going all the time. And then,
oh no, we lost Ian. Let's let his connection come back.
How I remember being in a shop where people are working and they're leaning over to the guy next to him and say, "Hey, you ever seen a bridge pen like this before?" And they say, "Yeah, back in 1972, I saw one like that, and you should throw it away," or whatever the advice is, But that's what goes on, and that's part of it too. But
great.
Yeah,
sounds like a great community. Doug, not to be outdone, has been working on some type of workstation or something you're working on?
Yeah, we got something coming out with Jeff at Total Vice. I'll bring it over.
Sure.
we got a video coming out on this too. I was just up at Doug's. We're shooting for several hours.
Could be on YouTube.
Yeah, it'll be on YouTube eventually.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be on YouTube, but Jeff's Total Vice site is totalvice.com. I got a guitar in it at the moment that I'm working on, but this is a device that allows you to, we were talking a little bit about before how I like to work above the bench.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to be able to have access to a guitar no matter where I need to get to it, whether I'm doing fret or what have you, and be able, I don't know if you can see that on the screen.
Yeah, we can see it, yeah.
But that will initially allow you to, in its base form, allow you to have access to a guitar, and from any position, to virtually any, the guitar virtually being immobile while you're working on it. So when you're doing frets, a lot of times you're filing frets and the guitar is moving around on the bench and also lying in its own detritus. So this was the original concept. Then Jeff and I were also redesigning another vice of his called a crossover, which looks like this, that when used in conjunction with my new workstation, allows me to be able to position a guitar virtually.
Oh, wow.
In any position on any axis you could possibly want to work on any part of the guitar that I could need at any angle. So if I'm doing brace work or if I'm doing bridge work, for example, I was working with it in the prototype stage, working on a Martin guitar, being able to do a bridge reglue by actually looking down, directly down to the bridge, where I can see the entire footprint of the bridge from all angles without having to spend all of my time hovering over the bench, working on braces inside with that. Where we spend half of our time turning ourselves into pretzels and draining our sinuses. So my idea was to have a workstation that would allow me to be able to have a guitar in any position for any repair, whether it's structural work. I French polish guitars in this jig. I can have a guitar face up, face down. I can do peg head breaks in this jig. I could do virtually any job at any height that you could possibly want.
Nice.
So this is the new workstation. We're calling it Proper's Guitar Workstation, and it's going to be available at totalvice.com.
Totalvice.com, and then Ian's also doing a video about it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I was just up there looking at this thing too, and it's like, it's amazing. You know, I destroyed my back working in a guitar factory that was set up. Everything was set up by a guy who was like 5'2", and so everything was really low. And this getting things off of the bench and into heights where your spine is straight while you're working is just like, for longevity of your body in this business, like it's something to really consider,
right?
Because bending over benches is bad news for your back.
Yeah, very fascinating. Thank you very much, Doug, for showing us that. And what was the place you could get it again?
Say that one more time.
Where's the place you can get it? The website?
That's at www.totalvice.com.
Totalvice.com.
If you have more interest in looking at that stuff, go to Doug's Instagram, Guitar Specialist Inc. at Guitar Specialist Inc. on Instagram, because he is posting, updates all the time on what's going on there, and there's good video representation of what that thing will do in practicality.
Perfect.
In the shop. So,
all right. Well, we've gone a little bit longer. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to you, Robbie, for making this happen. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And
well, the feeling is mutual, and thank you for Doug and Dan and Ian for coming on here. Good big round of applause for everybody. Thank you so much. We've gone a little bit longer than when I usually go. I try and keep these to about an hour, but we could go on for several hours. I mean, this is just great stuff, great information, great stories. And so I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy day. It goes back to, what we were talking about business-wise. If you're not in front of your bench or in front of a client, you're not making money. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I hope the viewers appreciate the information we're trying to get out here. So I'm going to take them. Go ahead, Dan.
We don't mind. Let's go all day.
I could certainly do it. In fact, this leaves it open for a round two. We can do this again in the future.
We can do
I'll have you guys on again to tell some more stories.
Anytime, Bobby. Anytime.
I want to bring on Cesar and Manuela down there in Brazil one more time. We're going to do one more quick drawing. Let's see if we can pull them up. Here we go. There's Cesar and Manuela. Yay! Hello. What are we going to give away now, Cesar?
So why don't we give away in this round one of Greg Maxwell's repair and restoration courses?
That sounds wonderful. That's available at luthiacademy.com, Greg Maxwell's repair and setup course. So how many people are in the drawing?
So we have the 57 participants on this
57,
round.
Okay.
Go ahead. And
Number
we have
54.
Number 54. Let's see who is number 54. Right over here. And that's Matt.
Matt, and I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but congratulations. You're the winner of Greg Maxwell's and setup course on the Luther Academy.
Congratulations, Matt.
All right. Thank you, Cesar. Thank you, Manuela.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Once
Thank
again,
you.
thank you to everybody for participating. Our guest, Doug Proper, the guitar specialist, Dan Erlewine, and Ian Davlin. Make sure you go check out their websites. There's a lot of great information there. They're doing great work. And I look at, transmitting information. I've been a teacher for my whole life, but I look at transmitting information. It's like surfing. If there's a high tide, we can all surf. And I look at information is like the tide. So the more information we can put out there, the more we can all surf and benefit together. So thank you for everybody for doing that. And I'll go ahead and sign out. And thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.